Welcome to the Cocktail Guru Podcast,
a show about food, drink, and entertainment,
with a tight focus on the good life,
and all things delicious, luxurious, and fun.
I'm Jonathan Pogash, bartender, author, and the host of Cocktails The Grand Tour.
And I'm Jeffrey Pogash, wine and spirits professional, author, insatiable collector of culinary ephemera, and so people tell me, an engaging raconteur.
And my dad. Okay, Dad, there you are. It's so great to see you, as always.
Well, thank you, John. It's great to see you.
You know what I was thinking? I see myself often when I do these, and I've got a pretty epic beard happening, and I thought I should have shaved before this, and it always makes me think of your epic mustache.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yes, I've had this mustache for many, many years, but I also had an epic beard in my youth.
Yes, hippie beard. And I'm always reminded of the time when we were kids, Dad, and you shaved off your mustache, and we revolted like it was the American Revolution. It was so hilarious. Do you remember that?
Your mother went ballistic.
I can't believe you didn't even tell her that you were going to do it.
Nope, I just did it. And now I've been trying ever since, but she won't let me shave it.
I need a drink. How about you?
Well, I happen to have one right here, John. This is fantastic. And it's in honor of our next guest.
I'm just going to add my garnish, which is an orange peel. Ooh.
Please do. Well,
so the oil's being expressed.
It's supposed to be an orange spiral. So I did something. I cut a large piece of orange, but it's still not a spiral.
Yes, it's a little mangled.
But it's okay. Well, it's not mangled.
Let's change. This is a cable car, ladies and gentlemen, and
it's a cable car in honor of our next
guest.
It's
a variation on a cable car because instead of the simple syrup in the recipe, we're using Monin passion fruit syrup, which is a really nice addition to this cocktail. Kind of gives it a little bit of a tiki flair. What do you think?
Precisely. Matches our tiki shirts.
Oh my goodness. Ooh,
cheers.
And rum. Hold on. We're using Stroh, which is an Austrian spiced rum, 160 proof, which means it's 80% alcohol.
Oh my gosh. It is potent. It's delicious.
I know.
It's mixing beautifully with the Monin passion fruit syrup. The blend is beautiful. Wow. And we have our next guest, special guest for today, to thank for this drink that we are enjoying right now.
Let's introduce him right now. You want to do that, right, Dad?
Well, yes, we do. You know, John, every day that we do a podcast is a special day.
Special day.
It is, and today is no exception, as we have a very special guest who comes from the wonderful world of mixology. He was born and raised in the town of Port Huron, Michigan, of all places, where he learned the restaurant business from an early age, thanks to his cousin who owned a place called the Brass Rail Cafe. I was trying to remember, racking my brain.
Yes, you were. You were trying to remember when the first time you met him was.
The first time I met our special guest. And I believe that it was in 1998 or thereabouts in Las Vegas at the newly opened Bellagio Resort Hotel and Casino. And I was working with a sales representative from Shefflin and Somerset Company, the company that I was hired by at the time, and we were making a courtesy call to the bartender. And the head bartender was, of all people, Tony Abou-Ganim, also known as the Modern Mixologist.
Let's welcome our amazing guest, Tony Abou-Ganim.
Welcome, Tony.
Jeffrey, Jonathan, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to see you again. And I only wish I could be there with you, sipping on that delicious variation on my cable car.
I hope it's okay. I hope it's okay that we made a variation on the cable car.
Oh, that is the beautiful thing about what we do, is taking a classic cocktail as a inspiration. And that's not to say that cable car is yet a classic.
Oh, it is. Come on.
It's the 25th anniversary of its creation. So
wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, it is a classic, and it was kind of a variation on another classic, correct, called the Brandy Cruster.
That's exactly right. That was the inspiration behind the drink's creation in 1996 when I was in San Francisco at the Starlight Room working with Harry Denton, and the people from Captain Morgan came to us and said, can you create a drink with our rum? And that, as you know, in '96, you didn't see a lot of cocktail menus. You didn't see a lot of creative original drinks. So it was all kind of new. So that was one of my first, and went on to be probably my best known original creation.
And before we get into other aspects of cocktails and your career and your upbringing, we always ask our guests, any guest who comes onto the Cocktail Guru podcast, what is your desert island drink?
Well, I'm drinking it right now.
What?
Yeah,
Ooh.
this is a drink, well, that we all know today. But when I discovered it in 1991, the Negroni was not known
Mm,
by anyone really in the United States.
right.
David O'Malley at Harry Denton's on Stewart Street introduced it to me quite by accident. And don't tell anybody this, but the first time I tasted a
It's
Negroni,
okay.
I
No,
spit it out.
nobody listen. Nobody will know. Nobody listens to this podcast, so don't worry.
I was like, is it supposed to taste like this? But they say even the Italians need to try it 3 times before falling in love with it. And I stuck with it. And yeah, it's my go-to. And like you said, if I was on a desert island, it would be me and the Negroni.
But wait a second. Wait a second.
Uh-oh.
Wait.
What?
This guy, our guest.
Oh,
I think I recognize you, Tony.
well,
Aren't
gosh, wait a minute.
aren't,
Yes.
aren't,
Weren't you that?
aren't you the Alka-Seltzer cold and
Oh my
flu guy?
gosh, I knew it.
Aren't you?
I knew
I
it.
knew there was a reason why I recognized you. Not because you're a bartender.
That's so funny, Jeffrey. Yes. In 1993, I was the Alka-Seltzer Plus cold and flu guy. As a lot of us have a theater background, and I started, theater, but I was always bartending. You tell someone you're an actor, and they say, "Well, where do you attend bar?"
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those two careers just were interwoven. So yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up because I am in the process right now here in Las Vegas of getting together some bartenders to form a theater company.
Wow.
No kidding.
Well,
Really?
that's interesting.
Well, I was quite active in the theater in San Francisco, and when I came to Las Vegas in 1998, it kind of all went by the wayside, and it's always just as a passion. I think you both know the passion of theater and what that kind of burns inside you. So, in all my free time, I'm going to put together a theater company and stage some plays here in Las Vegas.
Holy cow,
Fantastic.
that's amazing.
Yes.
I definitely want to learn more about that. But if we could go back a little bit and your upbringing in Port Huron, Michigan, what was it like growing up there? What was it like being in that area? And then what kind of got you into, well, I guess theater, which is really your first love?
Well, as your father mentioned, I grew up in the hospitality business. On my dad's side of the family was the Brass Rail Bar, and on my mom's side was French's Bakery. So I was a chubby little drunk kid running around our house. But, what was instilled in me at an early age was how important the art of hospitality is. So my dad talked Helen, my cousin Helen, who opened the bar in 1937 and ran it for nearly 70 years, to make me a bartender. And she took me under her wing along with my Uncle Charlie and my cousin Tony in 1980. And that was where it all started. And, I learned the classics. I learned, the basics to what a great classic bar was all about. But like I said, the number one lesson that Helen instilled in me was how important hospitality is. She would always say, "Tony, treat your customers at the bar the way you treat guests in your home." And that's been a lesson that's stuck with me. And 42 years later, still is the mantra.
And so
That's
working,
so important.
it's
So
it's
important.
it's so important.
And you and Harry Johnson. I mean, he was really one of the first authors that I read when I started out in this business, who codified, who insisted, who underscored the importance of being kind to your guests and treating them well and giving them a glass of water when they sit down at the bar and just treating them, as you say, the way you would like to be treated yourself.
It's so important, and never so much as it is today. You know, people are just hungry for interaction, to be out again, and to, you know, just a smile on a face and a handshake and a warm welcome. I mean, a thank you. I mean, those things go a long, long way.
And it was really Helen who instilled this in you, as you were saying. And so you were actively working behind that bar through teenage years, college. How did that work out?
Not quite teenage years. No, I mean, unless you count putting empty beer bottles back in the case with my Uncle Charlie so he'd make me a Shirley Temple. Uh, no, I started when I was 20. I finished 2 years of college. Between, I was kind of a lost soul, and my dad said, Helen, I think Tony would make a good bartender. And believe it or not, she didn't want to make me a bartender. She said, let's send him to culinary school to become a chef. Because in 1980, being a bartender wasn't the most, you know, ambitious,
Reputable.
reputable career to aspire to, but being a chef was one of the, you know, great culinary positions. But she finally gave in, and her, and along with, like I said, my Uncle Charlie, my Uncle Saul, my cousin Tony, they all worked behind that great bar, and that's where I cut my teeth.
And that started around 1980, correct?
Yeah,
The bartending phase of your career.
that was the
Yes.
bartending phase of my career, and I worked there, you know, steadily for a couple years, then went back and finished my degree because, Jeffrey, back then you tell somebody you were a bartender and they'd say, okay, well, what do you want to be? It
Yeah,
wasn't like, well, I'm having a
exactly.
good time being a bartender. I
Right.
maybe aspire to be a great bartender.
Right.
So yeah, I went back, got a business degree, moved out to San Francisco, started to be a stockbroker. I thought, well, I've got a business degree,
Wow,
and
really?
yeah. It was like uh, I was listening to people. I said, all right, I guess bartending isn't a career, but the whole time I was working for Charles Schwab, I was still bartending on the weekends. And eventually, I said, I don't think this stockbroker thing is for me, and I started bartending full time and started again doing theater, and that's kind of where I was when Dale recommended me to the people at Bellagio, George Goldhoff from the Rainbow days, and that's how I ended up in Las Vegas in 1998.
Well, you're getting a little ahead of yourself, Tony, if I may be so bold, because I happen to know that before all of that happened, first you had to meet Dale.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that was when you were making a trip to New York around 1993 or
that
so.
that is correct.
Yes.
I'd actually, as the Alka-Seltzer Plus cold and flu guy, had decided to move to New York City and pursue an acting career, and with the goal of working on Broadway. But then when I got turned down for the role of a dead guy in a musical, I realized that can't even
You just couldn't play the part.
I have to say, you would have been an amazing dead guy.
can't even get cast
Jeez.
as
Oh,
a
boy.
dead guy on Broadway. But that's when I met Dale, yeah, at the Rainbow Room, and I sat at the bar, and he didn't know who I was, and I just knew of Dale, and I remember just watching him, and just watching his, again, art of hospitality and the crafting of the drinks, and I watched his guests watching him prepare drinks and how he would greet them and know everyone's name, and it was just such a magical moment. This light bulb went off, and unbeknownst to Dale, that was really the turning point in my professional career. I said, here I am chasing this dream of being an actor, and I love being a bartender, and I have a lot more control over being a great bartender. Why not just be the best bartender you can be? And it was in that moment in 1993, sitting at the bar at the Rainbow Room, that I had that revelation and just set out to, be the best bartender I could be. And it was, in big part thanks to the inspiration of Dale DeGroff.
And then what? And so you had that epiphany, and what did you do next?
Well, I was committed to New York at that time, so I stuck it out in New York. I was Mario Batali's first bartender at his first restaurant, Poe, on Cornelia Street, So I was working at Poe. I was chasing this dream, but all the time, because as Jeffrey said, back then you couldn't go on the internet and Google stuff. You had to actually go to a library and
Right.
try to find books and things like the Harry Johnson and start doing some research. But we talked about cocktail menus. The cocktail menu at the Rainbow Room, that was the first time I had actually been presented a separate menu of cocktails, and I thought, this is brilliant. So when I went back to work with Harry at the Starlight Room in '95, that was the first cocktail menu I ever wrote, and they were rare. They were rare back then.
And what was the San Francisco scene at that time?
Oh, it was bumping. It was great. I belonged to a theater company. I had a great gig at the Starlight Room. I loved San Francisco at the time. I had a great life. So, when I got that call in 1998 from George Goldhoff about the Bellagio, I thought it was the craziest idea in the world. I was like, I'm really happy here. I'm, entrenched. I had a great job. I was part of a theater company. I had my motorcycle.
Oh, wow, cool, so cool.
Yeah, life was good. So I thought it was nuts. And then my best friend Greg Miller, who was a stockbroker, and my roommate, he said, "You have got to do this. You will never be presented with an opportunity like this again, to be able to preach your beliefs on such a huge stage, not just nationally but internationally." Because as you know, Jonathan, I mean, at that time, the Bellagio, all eyes were on the opening of the Bellagio in '98. It was really,
huge.
Yeah, it really tipped the scale on what could be done in a casino environment. So,
well, we're going to take a quick pause, and we'll hear more about the Vegas escapades in just a moment.
There's nothing better than the smell of coffee in the morning. What if you could enjoy a coffee subscription of fresh, roasted specialty coffee while making a difference in the lives of the farmers that grow it? What if you also had access to a virtual coffee community of other coffee lovers and the coffee farmer and roaster? That's all part of the Farm to Cup Coffee Club subscription at Unleashed Coffee. Subscribe today. UnleashedCoffee.com.
And we are back. Cocktail in hand.
I want to, but aside from the Bellagio escapades, I'd like to know more about
That was the name of my band in high school.
the escapades. I'd like to know more about Harry Denton and Harry Denton's Starlight Room.
Ooh,
because we kind of just whizzed by that part.
we did. Let's go backwards.
But it's an important part because that's when you created the cable car cocktail. And another cocktail, which apparently preceded the cable car, called the Starlight.
that's absolutely correct. And thank you. Harry Denton, God rest his soul.
Yes.
What an amazing impact he had on San Francisco nightlife. It started with Harry's on Fillmore Street, that iconic bar that is still there today. Just a fabulous saloon, just a wonderful place. And again, long before any of this craft cocktail bar scene was happening, San Francisco was always just a little ahead of itself. Jack Slick at the Balboa Cafe, what they were doing at Bick's, Doug Biederbeck's place. It was really the attention to detail on classic cocktails. Harry wasn't so much a barman as he loved the bar. He was the consummate host, the great entertainer, the person who knew everyone's name, who welcomed you into the saloon or the bar. And I don't think that people today in San Francisco really understand and give Harry the due he deserves for the contributions he made to the nightlife industry in San Francisco. But I had met him, and getting a bartending gig at a Harry Denton establishment was next to impossible.
Big deal.
It was a huge deal. I mean, it was a huge deal. So in '91, when he opened Harry Denton's on Stewart Street, I got hired on the opening team and was there for 2.5 years until I moved to New York City. And it was one of the greatest bar experiences of my life. And it was the first time that I really embraced the concept of a bar team, because the bartending team was that. It was a team. We would, meet in the locker room, and you would change into your uniform, and you would, get your bank, and you would almost go into a sporting event when you got behind the bar, because it was so busy and just, it was like an orchestra. It was
like a
ballet.
like a cast in a theatrical production.
Absolutely.
In a way as well,
No, Jonathan, you're absolutely right. And it was such a wonderful experience. And there was Harry, he was the conductor. He was, making sure that, all the details were in place, and that the servers all looked beautiful, and the doormen were in tuxedos, and that the guest had an amazing experience.
He was the impresario of the restaurant and bar industry in San Francisco, was he not? I mean,
larger than life.
He was Mr. Saturday Night.
Yeah.
A party wasn't a party without Harry.
No,
right?
And Harry knew everyone from, the firemen to the mayor, to the socialites. Everyone knew and loved Harry, and I think we've lost that. And I don't think it's just COVID, but I mean, the art of the maitre d'. I mean, there was a time when that maitre d' was more important than the chef.
Yes.
And it's so funny that, I'm glad that we went back to talk about the Starlight Room, because I've just recently signed a deal to go back and work with the people who have now bought the Starlight Room.
Wow.
So it's like I'm going full circle.
Yes, you are.
It's about a year plus out, but I'm so excited to be back. And one of the things that, we talked about is, who is the next Harry Denton? Who is that person that, in Harry's time, he had everything on a Rolodex. Now, again, it's all on your computer. But I mean, Harry, that everybody knew Harry. They would call him, get their table. He'd know their anniversary, their kids, their birthdays, where they were. I mean, it was just, it's a true art to watch a great front man do his job.
I think it's a generational thing, and we've lost it. We don't have anybody, and I don't think we even have the potential to have anybody like Harry Denton, or let's say a James Beard on the East Coast. I think Harry Denton reminded me a lot of James.
I personally think Jeffrey Pogash is pretty close to being the consummate host.
No. Well, you're too kind. Thank you, co-host.
But Dad, you did want to be a butler.
I wanted to be a gentleman's gentleman.
A gentleman's gentleman.
Yes, whatever that was means. One of my goals in life, and I would not say no to that job today.
I
can't
imagine that. So
you are truly a gentleman's gentleman. I've always felt that since, and you're right. We did meet in 1998 at the Bellagio. When we first got there. That's my memory of our first meeting.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the escapade of
the Bellagio was at the time the great luxury hotel of Las Vegas. Was it not?
It absolutely was, and to this day, remains, I think, the standard in being able to deliver that type of experience to the guests, from being a casino resort, but everything that Steve Wynn's vision was, from hiring and bringing in celebrity chefs. That was early on in the term celebrity chefs,
right?
But people like Jean George and Julian Serrano and Michael Mina, to name a few. I mean, it was an amazing lineup, and Elizabeth Blau had a lot to do with orchestrating that. But they also understood that cocktails were very, very important. And up until that point in Las Vegas, the cocktail was kind of an afterthought. There was really no attention put on the quality. It was how inexpensively can we put it out? How quickly can we get it out?
How colorful could it be? Could it work with sparklers?
Exactly. And the idea of even fresh squeezed juices then on that scale. And when I talk about scale, we would serve about 25,000 drinks in a 24-hour period. So the volume
Wow.
was definitely there.
That is,
And
hold on a second. Can you say that again, please?
25,000 drinks in a 24-hour period.
Yes, and you were in charge of 200 bartenders.
A little over
Correct.
200
I
bartenders.
cannot, excuse me, but mind blown emoji is what's
No,
going on right now.
it's mind-boggling.
Well, just to remind you, I mean, that didn't come out of a single bar by any means. There were 29 different locations at that time that served drinks, between restaurants, service bars, casino floor bars. So, it's still a
Still,
mind-boggling number.
for one property, that's a
Yeah.
huge number of drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why when you would bring in a spirit, and again, it was different back then. You didn't really understand the marketing force that being on a menu at the Bellagio could really do.
Right.
I remember, when we opened, it wasn't buying bottles or cases. It was buying things by the pallet.
Pallets. I was just going to say, yeah.
And I remember going in the warehouse and seeing 2 pallets of Absolute Currant, of all things.
Metropolitan cocktails?
Yes, exactly. So I think we're going to have this for the next 20 years if we don't do something with it.
Oh my gosh.
So I put a Metropolitan on the menu, and within 3 months, we were reordering Absolute Currant.
What's the history of the Metropolitan cocktail? I have not heard that cocktail in years.
It's out of New York.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it's out of New York. I'm trying to remember the name of the bar.
But it would have been like mid-90s, right?
Something like that. Yeah. It would have been a riff, again, getting back to the cable car, but it would have been a riff on a Cosmopolitan.
Right. It's just a Cosmo with Absolute Currant. That's it.
But it went through 2 pallets of Absolute Currant on the menu.
Oh my gosh.
So, so if you were, and again, at that time, there was no pay to play,
Right.
We'll put you on the menu, but we need marketing. All we looked for was education. We wanted staff training. That was really the foundation of the program. So, if we were going to do something, with a rum, we'd love to get the master distiller in. If we were going to do something with Jack Daniels, we wanted to get the master distiller in and we created one of the first single barrel Jack Daniels programs there in '99, and went on to become the world's #1 account for Jack Daniels single barrel. And it was out of the program that we built around a drink I created called the Tennessee Highball, and having the master distiller there and having a whiskey club. And so that's all we just look for education, and it's a win-win-win, with ultimately the winner being the customer.
Yeah, but nobody was doing that, let alone in Vegas. Come on, giving the education and steps of service and the hospitality, and it was brand spanking new.
It was brand spanking new, and Jonathan, I had no idea what I was getting into. It was just kind of an enhanced version of what I believed in and what we were doing at the Starlight Room. But just like you said, upwards of 250 bartenders when we opened, and 350 cocktail servers. And that's how the cable car became so popular. They all fell in love with it. So some, I guess, would say, I'll have a Bud Light. And they said, have you ever tried a cable car? You should. They're delicious. You should have a cable car. You had
the classic upsell.
But no reason other than they loved it.
Yeah.
There was no, whoever sells the most cable cars wins an iPad. Well, they didn't have iPads then, but
a calculator watch.
A calculator watch.
I don't know.
I wish I still had mine.
but all good things must come to an end. So at a certain point, you decided to move on to other projects, but the legacy obviously continued on. And what was the next step after the Bellagio?
Well, like you said, things were expanding quickly, and I was getting a lot of opportunities and to do more educational training and expand beyond the walls of the Bellagio. And at first I was able to kind of balance the two. And by the end of 2003, it became apparent that they weren't digging it. I wasn't really able to do what I kind of envisioned myself going on to. So that's when I set up the Modern Mixologist and went out on my own and started doing, consulting and presentations and educational tastings, and which again, then there weren't a lot of people at that point doing that either. I mean, it was still the idea of the brand ambassador was still relatively new. So it was an interesting time, and it was a great time. And I started traveling, and from that point till COVID, I was traveling, about 100,000 miles a year, which was
Jeez.
quickly becoming too much. So
You think?
you think, yeah, I hope to never go back to logging those kind of miles again.
Jeez.
I was very happy because I was able to watch you in action, but via videotape, not so much in person. When I was on various Crystal Cruise vacations, we were actually working, doing art on the Crystal Cruise Line.
Yeah.
And Tony Abou-Ganim was the chief consulting bartender for the entire cruise line. So they kept running these tapes of you making all kinds of drinks. And I kept watching it and watching it. I never got tired of it, actually. I watched it the entire, whatever, 2-week trip. And I made my wife watch it, who she likes you very much as well. And it was just a thrill to see you in action, even though it was just videotape. But that was quite a gig that you had with Crystal.
That was a gig, and
Yeah.
I think in life you have different experiences. So even though I haven't actually done any acting since 1998, doing things like that when you're theater background and you're classically trained, when you do those type of presentations, as Jonathan knows well, I mean, you feel much more comfortable. You understand how to present and how to get the message across in a fun, entertaining, and educational way. So, Jeffrey, the fact that you and your wife were somewhat enthralled with those videos is the greatest compliment. So thank you. But
Oh, they were beautifully done. And I loved listening to you. I loved your voice. I loved watching you. Your action was just fantastic and beautiful. And you were very descriptive. And it made me want to drink more.
well, thank you. That's again a great compliment. But yeah, that was a wonderful gig that lasted for about 4 years, up until the recession kind of hit and everything got cut back. And after that, I was fortunate enough to stay on with Crystal as a guest speaker and would arrange different guest lecturers to come
Yeah.
on
Yes.
for it.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for being my contact on that route. And it's funny enough, there was one time where I believe maybe you had a conflict. So I was at, you had asked me to maybe cover, or someone asked me to cover, and it ended up being a Mexico cruise, and I got stuck in Costa Rica. I got stuck in Costa Rica because they were supposed to pick, the boat was supposed to dock in Costa Rica, and it went past because of weather. So it skipped my pickup. And I couldn't meet it in Mexico because I don't know, you can't pick it up in Mexico as an American, right? I mean, you can only be dropped off there, or I don't know. Anyway, that didn't
Yeah.
work out, but
Well, Costa Rica is not a bad place to get stuck if you got to get stuck. It's I picked up the ship in Costa Rica for a cruise, and unfortunately, I don't know if you heard the news, but Crystal has no longer. At least,
Oh, I
yes,
know. I
we've heard.
followed that for years. I
Mhm.
followed the saga,
yeah,
financial saga of Crystal Cruise. So I'm aware of that. It's very sad news.
it's
Very
very sad.
sad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we have to find another line to cruise with.
Yeah.
If
Yes.
anyone's listening out
Please,
there from
please keep
a
us in mind.
cruise line, you've got a trifecta of talent
Yes.
right over here.
And now, passing on to the next phase of your career, I'd love to know how Libertine Social came about, because
Oh,
that's your current major project.
that's the major project here in Las
Yeah.
Vegas at Mandalay
Yeah.
Bay. August will be our 6th-year anniversary.
Wow, that's
Wow.
huge.
Wow.
That is quite huge for Las Vegas, I'd say.
We're thrilled. I mean, again, We have a great team there. The partners, and it's a funny story. And again, you never know. Something happens, some doors open, you turn right instead of left.
Yeah.
I got a call from the Iron Chef people, and I'd been on once before, and they said, we'd like to have you back on for a couple more episodes. And the one episode, you'll be a challenger, and you'll be paired up with a chef from Las Vegas, Sean McLean. And at the time, Sean had a restaurant at Aria called Sage, which I'd eaten at. It was absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, did not survive the COVID shutdowns, but just the food was great. But I'd never met Sean. I said, that sounds great. We'll represent Las Vegas together. And I met Sean. We did some rehearsals. We did the live performance in New York City for Iron Chef. We won, and we became great friends. And we started looking to do something together. And when this space became available at Mandalay Bay, and he had already had a relationship with MGM at Aria, we had an opportunity to bid a concept. And the concept was Libertine Social, and we won the bid. And like I said, we opened 6 years ago, August, and it's just been a fantastic relationship. Sean lives in Michigan, and I went on to be a very, very small partner at Highlands and Hearth, which is the restaurant that opened on top of the Renaissance Center in Detroit. So Sean and I continue to be great friends, and we're ready for a rematch.
And the menu at Libertine Social looks fantastic. My mouth was watering as I was reading it. I haven't unfortunately been there yet to enjoy it.
I've been. I have.
You
been.
have? Oh, good.
Oh,
Good.
yeah.
At least one of us has. And also, you feature one of my favorite drinks of all time, the Queen's Park Swizzle.
Love that drink.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You serve that by the pitcher. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, when we opened, we really, again, we put a focus on resurrecting some lost and forgotten styles of cocktails. We did a whole section on fizzes, and we did swizzles. So we really put an emphasis on whiskey, but also on rums, and a lot of aged rums. And the Queen's Park Swizzle, I think, probably one of the all-time great rum-based drinks that you can imbibe on. I'll put it right up there with a daiquiri or a mojito any day. And,
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
And so we thought, well, what we wanted to do things very communally. So we would do large formats, and one of the things we would do would be pictures of swizzles, which the server would bring to the table. We got our friends from Angostura sent me a bunch of Caribbean swizzle sticks. So there'd be tableside swizzling, and just, it was a nice interactive way to share that and elevate that experience with the guest.
I was fortunate enough to spend a good amount of time in Bermuda, where I studied quite diligently the art of making the swizzle.
And it
was delectable, delicious. Yeah.
We have to mention your books.
Oh, yes.
Because they have been a huge influence in the cocktail community. The Modern Mixologist and Vodka Distilled.
Thank you. Yes. The Modern Mixologist, definitely a labor of love. It mainly focuses on original cocktails of mine up to 2010, along with my interpretations or twists on classics, such as the Primo Margarita, which is my margarita recipe that I started making when I was at the Starlight Room in San Francisco. So 25 years ago, and I still to this day feature that recipe. Obviously, depending on the tequila, you can switch that up, but the rest of the recipe of fresh lemon, agave, fresh lime, and Cointreau stay the same. And I also do the drinks for the Raiders and for the Knights, and
that's right. We need to mention that too. The new stadium.
Yeah, the new stadium, the new arena. Not so new now. We're
right.
7 years in at.
Oh, is it arena. Already 7 years? It feels like it's just brand new, but
crazy. Yeah, this is our 5th season
wow.
with the Vegas Golden Knights, and very sad time right now, Jonathan, because I'm not watching my Knights in the playoffs this year for the first time.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about that.
But the Rangers, I see the Rangers are doing great. You've got our old coach Gallant and Ryan Reeves, so I'm pulling for the Rangers. But yeah, very sad. But long story short, that has become our number one selling drink. Uh, I should say cocktail, especially cocktail, at both T-Mobile and at Allegiant. Where at Allegiant during a game we'll do 7,000 to 9,000 of these handcrafted scratch margaritas, and they're
Mm.
still squeezing limes a la minute.
They're squeezing limes a la minute,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Wow.
is everything else
Wow.
batched?
No, everything is every drink is made a la
A
minute.
minute.
Really?
Wow. That
We
Oh
means
my gosh.
right at the moment.
yeah.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Incredible.
Yeah, no, it's we've got a great crew of bartenders at both the Allegiant and T-Mobile. So it's and it's one of those things. Generally, when you go to a sporting event and you order, say you try a margarita and it comes out with an artificial imitation sweet and sour mix,
Mhm.
that leaves baggage on the roof of your mouth like a Samsonite carry-on bag. You might not even finish it, let alone order a second one. Whereas if you elevate that experience and people come to know and accept that and understand that you're doing a fresh premium drink, not only will they finish it, they'll probably have a second one. They're tell their friends about it, and all of a sudden you go from selling a few hundred to several thousand. And
Well, every time I see you and hear you, Tony, it always makes me think of the wise words that you have taught young bartenders and that you preach. And I use a lot of the information that I've learned from you in my trainings that I do for bars and bartenders. And one of the biggest ones, one of the most recognizable ones to me is the you taste with all five of your senses, which I love that from you. And for those of you who have never heard that, Tony, please, what do you mean by you taste with all five of your senses?
well, obviously the drink needs to be visually appealing, so that's one. Uh, Secondly, the aromatics are important. So you have to consider how the drink smells. So that's two. Um, Obviously, the way the drink is going to taste is very important. That's perhaps the most important. How the drink itself feels. Are we taking into consideration the proper glassware? Am I serving a cocktail in that glass or an old jam jar? They're both vessels, but the drink experience is just going to be enhanced with the right glassware. But perhaps my favorite sense is the sense of hearing when two people are sharing a drink together and the glasses come together and make that. There it is. Yes, have it. That's so. Yeah.
That's it. And I love it. Perfectly embodies the entire experience that the cocktail should be, because it's not, and this pulls from Dale, I think, it's not the bartender, it's not the ingredient, it's not the bar stool, it's not the music, it's everything combined
Hmm.
together to create that experience that makes you continue to go back and go back to the same place.
You're absolutely right, and I think that's summed up as hospitality. Just paying attention to the details. One of the things that Helen would always say is, for a nickel more, you go first class. And I think that can be broken down to just that, paying attention to those details and making sure that all of them are accounted for and you're able to elevate the guest experience. And like you said, make them leave your establishment better than they first walked in.
Right.
And that's what a great bartender does. And somebody said, I think it was Dale, perhaps I saw this during an interview with you. He said, I don't go to bars, I go to bartenders.
Mm.
It's a
And
great
that
Dale
kind of
DeGroff quote.
sums it up
Yes,
too.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I wish I
before
said that.
you before we go, I just want you to briefly talk about the Helen David Foundation, and what sort of activities and involvement there is with that.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, Jonathan. As you know, I, along with Dave Grapschi and Julio Bermejo from Tommy's in San Francisco, we established the TAG Global Spirits Awards this year for the first time. Hugely successful. The idea behind the TAG Global Spirits Awards is, yes, it's a spirits competition at the foundation, but we wanted to bring the consumer into the equation. We wanted to be able to have enthusiasts, our end user, our customers, our friends, to be able to participate. So we've expanded that to have festive dinners. We did one with Tito's and Patron and Campari and Wild Turkey and Garrison Brothers, educational tracks. And then it all finalized with the Pink Tie Gala to benefit the Helen David Relief Fund. And I'm proud and honored to say that we were able to contribute $30,000 on behalf of TAG Global to the Helen David Relief Fund, which benefits bartenders and their families who are going through cancer treatment. It's a charity that I started in 2010 in memory of my cousin Helen David, who in her lifetime was a 2-time breast cancer survivor. She ultimately died in 91 from a heart attack, but during her life, she survived breast cancer twice, and she was a big advocate towards the cause. And she, another thing she instilled in me was always better to give than to take, and you'll be remembered by what you leave behind. She was very philanthropic, and I'm blessed to have had that influence as well. So in her memory, I started the Helen David Relief Fund to help bartenders with all those incidental costs that go along with being diagnosed, going through treatment, and then going through recovery. Everything from co-payments to testing to wigs to the rent needs to be paid. The kid needs new shoes, things that you don't really think about and that insurance probably doesn't help with. So to date, we've helped over 60 bartenders, and it really is a charity that was set up by bartenders to benefit bartenders.
And I'm blessed to have participated in some of the bike rides for the Helen David Relief Fund, one of which was during one of the USBG regional conferences. And you were there, Tony, and we rode our bikes from Detroit to Port Huron and went right to that bar.
Wow.
That was one of the most special days of my life, I think, to see all of these amazing You've heard me talk about the Brass Rail for years. But to have all these bartenders to be able to be at the Brass Rail to kind of experience Helen and the contribution she's made to the industry, because it really is almost a museum of sorts.
Oh, yes.
Has not really changed much since 1937.
Right.
And to have all these wonderful bartenders in there just kind of taking it all in. And that back bar is such a beautiful piece.
Beautiful.
Nearly 200 years old, came over from Italy, the goddess of wisdom, the goddess of knowledge, the Tiffany lamps. And my cousin Maroon, who was behind the bar with me in his white shirt and tie, as he always was, I've never seen him as happy as he was for that event. And he has just recently passed, and he left us way too soon. So the bar right now is closed, pending what the next step is for the Brass Rail. So who knows? Maybe I'll even spend more time back in Michigan. We'll see.
Wow. Well, hey, that's kind of a...
Well, we have a lot to be thankful for when it comes to Helen. She has contributed immensely, and we can probably say without Helen, there might not be the Tony Abou-Ganim that we know today.
I think that's probably very safe to say, Jeffrey, and thank you. And I think she'd be very proud. I think she'd be very honored and humbled as well. As you know, the Tales of the Cocktail also does their Lifetime Achievement Award in honor of Helen.
Yes, the Helen David Lifetime Achievement Award, yes.
Yeah, which is, again, like I said, I know she'd be beyond humbled and honored by that.
Well, Tony Abou-Ganim, thank you. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on our podcast.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey, Jonathan, a pleasure. And let's see each other on a cruise ship real soon.
We will. Thank you so much, Tony. Thanks for taking the time to do this. That does it for today's show. If you enjoy what we do, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also support the show with a small monthly donation to help sustain future episodes. Just click on the donate button at the top of our website and choose your donation amount. To learn more about future guests, visit www.thecocktailgurupodcast.com or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
The Cocktail Guru podcast is produced by First Reel Entertainment and distributed by EatsDrinksTV, a service of the Center for Culinary Culture, home of the Cocktail Collection, and is available via Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, and wherever you listen to your favorite shows.